Welcome to episode, 159 of Blue Lightning Healing Meditations. Today I'm talking to Sage Stevens, a person I met online at one of these events that I do. They are non-binary and they are an advocate for gender acceptance. This has been a very eye-opening interview for me while I understand transgender and the sexuality spectrum and all of this. Sage really gave me insight and even some learning around pronouns and respect, and I am so grateful to have had them here today. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Welcome to Blue Lightning Healing Meditations. My name is Susie Parker Goins. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a channel, so I bring forward your guides so you can connect more easily with them, allowing you to have soul-deep conversations with them whenever you want. I'm an energy healer, a past life explorer, a mentor. My goal is to empower you by teaching you techniques that you can use on your own. We work together to find and identify the blockages to your growth and release them, inviting you to explore your possibilities. I'm available for phone and virtual sessions, and with Washington State opening up, I will be at some of these in-person events. The best way to contact me is through susie@bluelightninghealing.com. You can also contact me through my website, bluelightninghealing.com. There you'll find links in a fully searchable database of my podcasts, a link for my Ko-fi.com account to support me in my efforts, and a full calendar of events so that you know where I'll be online and in person. Oh yeah, and the appointment scheduler. That's there too. Thanks so much. Blessings. So we're recording. Welcome to Blue Lightning Healing Meditations. I'm Susie Parker Goins, and I am a podcast host, among other things. It's great fun. So I get to bring forward people I know I've only known Sage a little bit, but I have come to admire them in some ways and definitely love them in that spiritual sense. But as a person, they are tremendous, and they have agreed to talk about their journey as a non-binary person. And yeah, I'm excited for this one. Sage, tell us about yourself and Q.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Sage. I use they, them pronouns. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I think that you are fantastic. Thank you so much for having me here, for letting me be seen, for letting other people be seen. So thank you for that. And I would love to talk about my journey, and I hope that allows those of you out there to feel like you can come out and be accepted and be yourself, even if you don't have that, and learn how to navigate a society that isn't always accepting of us and families as well. So I have a background in animal care, which then got me interested in mental health and really trying to target the burnout and compassion fatigue that helpers have from being helpers. And my passion is really helping people in the helping fields combat compassion fatigue, burnout, and all of those things. So that's where my background is from. I also have a background in crisis and research. So I love all things scientific as well as spiritual, and love to talk about how you can, mesh those together, and those things can work together to be a holistic way of embodying yourself. How my journey started out for my gender acceptance was pretty out of nowhere, to be honest. And I run support groups, and they're, we always put our name and pronouns in, I run that on Zoom. We always put our name and pronouns on our screen for everyone to model that behavior, and so that nobody is misgendered. One day I just had this really nagging, awful feeling when I heard she, her pronouns used for me. I am assigned female at birth. So that is the proper, air quotes, proper terminology, instead of saying, the person was male or was female or used to be, or no, it's just assigned male at birth, assigned female at birth. I had never had that experience before. I never felt any type of way about my pronouns until that moment. And then it really started me questioning things and really figuring out where it was coming from. It was really interesting and eye-opening for me. At first, when I came out, I was nervous to come out to my friends and family with my changed pronouns. It is totally nerve-wracking whether you are in the field, whether you're a helper, whether you're not. It doesn't matter. It is nerve-wracking regardless. And I was really nervous. So initially, I came out and I said, I like they them pronouns, but I was really too nervous to use only they them pronouns, and I came out initially as she/they. And I realized very shortly after that I was only keeping she there to keep other people comfortable. I didn't really like it.
Oh.
So at that point, I was like, oh no, that's not good. So I redid my post and retold my people that actually no, we're gonna completely do away with she. And I'm very thankful that for the most part people have been accepting and kind and caring, but that hasn't always been the case. So I want to touch on that as well, for those of you who may not have accepting family or any great support network for other LGBTQ people or really anything. It really does matter. Even just having one safe person, just one, really makes a huge difference. When I first came out, I have a very small family, and I have some unsupportive family. And for me, I made the choice to not have them in my life because that to me is too toxic. I'm not saying that everyone should make that decision. That is obviously up to you and your path and however you feel is best. But for me, I could not keep those people in my life. That is how I feel. If somebody can't respect me and can't see me for who I am, then they're not welcome in my
life. I've got friends who have not sadly, who have bravely gone through that process with their offspring being non-binary, and then a grandparent being pretty adamant about it and kind of took it to an extreme and trashed this family online. I'm like, the hell?
Ugh.
And so I was totally supportive. It's like, look, you all are making the choice to support your offspring, your child, and that's important. To totally throw anybody under the bus is not great, but sometimes you've got to cut that cord.
Absolutely. Sometimes they also need to know that there's consequences for their actions.
Yep. In any actions that are disrespectful, and it's not limited to gender expression or identity. Nope. It's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. But I do also have awesome supportive. My dad is such a support, such a fantastic human. I'm so grateful for him. And I knew that he wouldn't judge. I knew that he would just have questions. He's a scientist. He likes to think things logically, as I do. I'm a lefty. I completely, get that line of thinking, but I also have all of the other lines of thinking and spirituality and things like that. He really just had, a bunch of questions and didn't understand what that meant because he never had that experience, which is completely understandable. How can someone understand if they haven't experienced it themselves? So it was, a lot of honest conversation, me just willing to answer whatever questions he had because I knew they were never coming at me with anything with hate. It was always just out of curiosity, and I'm always happy to answer those questions. At this point, he really doesn't even, mess up pronouns anymore, doesn't, really have any other questions and really, really just got it. And I think that, my dad's older, he is late 60s. And I think that people have a perception of our elderly population that they can't possibly understand, or somehow there's some dissonance there, and that it just isn't true. Like he got it pretty quickly.
I don't think it's a blanket statement because some people, they are stuck in this 1950s mentality, but then there are those, and I would like to number myself among those, are like, chill. It's like, I'm practicing what I preach. And that's how I feel. That's how we started, is that during a reading, I misgendered you. And then I came back, not to toot my own horn, but I'm sitting here and my guides are really hitting me up saying, you need to say something to them. You need to apologize. You screwed up. And that's when I reached out to you and you
That's so
said,
funny.
no, it's all good. And you were saying that your partner was ready to beat my ass. Well, no, not beat my ass, but he was going to stand up and call me out. But I owned it and I'm very happy to, well, I am very willing to own my errors. But then that's what's prompted this friendship where we can
Yeah.
talk about this. And I am so grateful for that, that even though I fumbled, you're very open and forgiving about it. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad that this is how it worked out. And it was all thank you guys. Thank you to these guys for doing that, because it really, and like I was saying, I knew that you weren't coming at it with malice. So, being misgendered, it never feels good, but when the person means harm and when they don't. And I knew that you didn't. But I very, very much appreciated that you reached out. And I think that that's something that's important, that if you fumble, a friend or family member's pronouns, it's okay. We understand. It's a process. And I think, as long as there is a correction and, whether there's an apology or not, just don't make a big deal out of it, correct, move on, try not to do it in the future. But, people are human and mistakes happen, especially if you've known someone some way before and they use different pronouns for a long period of time. It's understandable it would take a while to learn.
So that's a question I've had that I have not asked my other friends, that if I've got a history with them, say like with the instructor, that the tech goddess I have at school, I knew her vaguely previous to her. I don't know how to even say it. I don't want to fumble it, but I knew her before.
Mhm.
What happens to those stories, those memories, as far as you're concerned? What would be, say I knew you before you understood yourself? How would I then be referring to you? I feel like referring to you by a dead name or by the pronouns that no longer apply, but to a past event. For me, that's a cognitive dissonance, but it's really not my problem, is it?
You're right. It's not. It's
Okay.
really based on what the person wants. If you were asking me how I would want to be referred, if you were speaking about me before I came out, I would still want to use my name and pronouns that I use now, because that's who I am.
Okay,
Um,
because you can say things like, remember the time we went and we
oh
did
yeah.
that,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's not referring. Okay, thank you. Yeah, the guides are like, oh Jesus, you made that such a big problem, but it's really not. It's referring to you in your present
Yeah.
self.
Exactly. And
Okay.
and actually that's a fantastic segue into what I wanted to talk about too, is about, when I first came out, I was so nervous to have to choose one label and one pronoun and one of everything, because I felt like I couldn't change them again if I realized that wasn't the best fit. So I am here to tell you that you are absolutely more than welcome to change your pronouns at any time, to change your name, or change the label you identify as, or change how you present and how you dress to best match the inner you. And I think
Yeah.
that permission isn't really told to us. It's not like an inherent, like, oh yeah, like you get to explore your gender identity, and that means you have the permission to change those things. And if people give you a hard time about it, know that has nothing to do with you, and it has to do with their perceptions and their stuff.
And I feel that that is applicable to all aspects of life. My oldest sister came and visited us, and it was, I don't know at what point in whatever political climate there was. And she said, I don't know what's happened to my party. I registered as my party in college like you're supposed to do. And she looked very pointedly at me and said, didn't you? And I'm just like, nope, I didn't register. I've been a GDI the whole damn time. And it kind of it's very much that giving permission to explore and be who you truly are in the moment at any point in your life. And so you expressing that thing, yes, let's all give everybody permission to be who they truly are. And then to take it a step further and to accept the consequences of it. So if you are truly kind and loving, great. May you reap all the benefits of that. But if you're truly a jerk, don't be surprised when people say, no, I'm done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think now more than ever, people are realizing that they no longer can get away with the things they used to be able to.
Yeah.
And people are having less patience for the things that maybe they let slide in the past. Maybe they didn't have better boundaries in the past. And I think it's really awesome to see so many people come out, be their true selves, be able to, be out in the open about it. There's so many celebrities recently that came out as well, which I think is
Yeah.
fantastic. It lets people, see that, everyone is human, everyone experiences gender, whether they acknowledge it or not. It is a part of everyone's life.
And
And that can change.
the Hollywood ideal was informed by a pretty restrictive paradigm, and wanting to just be Hollywood ideal is kind of unattainable anyway. But to the paradigm has shifted, the attention has shifted, and voices that have previously been stifled are now being heard. And then, of course, there's that resistance to it. It's like, well, we've always done it this way. And guess what? It's always been wrong.
Yeah,
So,
right. It's so interesting that people get so stuck on those things, and it's true. Just because something's been done for a while doesn't mean it's right. It's
yeah,
just been done for a while. And really, what's been around even longer are the Two-Spirit people in
yeah,
Native American culture, and there's so many cultures where being multiple genders or coming out is seen as a positive and an honor, and
celebrated. Yeah.
really that exactly they're celebrated. Really, our country and our society is really the only one that I know of in the major nations that we think of that has this weird ideal of what someone is. I've traveled to Europe. I love being out of the country. I think that it is so eye-opening, and it really makes you realize that all the things that you go through here and maybe all of the lack of acceptance here only means that that's this specific situation and this specific culture in this specific time, because that is not the case in other parts of the world and other parts of our country. And it's really important to recognize that, it's not that everyone hates you. It's that there are severely undereducated people who take their hate and make that be fact when we know that that's not the case. So if you're ever feeling like you don't belong, just know that you do. It may not be where you are at this moment.
Yeah. And if anything, they can come here. They can come hang with
Absolutely.
us. I have a shirt that says free mom hugs that I could wear out, but I do have that. Before we were in lockdown, there were a couple of people who hugged me, and I just whispered to them, it's like, you're loved, you're safe with me. Did you take your meds? Have you eaten anything?
No.
And one person said, I did take my meds and now I'm gonna go get a snack. I was like, okay, that's for me, that's the point of being loved and accepted, and I'm good with that. So talk to either of us about that if anybody needs that. You talked about your journey. Your dad accepted you. That's great. In our previous conversations, you have talked about how your gender acceptance, I love that phrase, your gender acceptance has had a mental health component and your spirituality component. Okay.
Absolutely. I think that, for everyone experiences, their own journey differently. Of course. What was the question?
I know I don't think it was well formed. There was, yeah, okay, so your vocational path has taken you through up to a mental health component, helping folks who are in need, who are searching for their answers. And so you help them find answers. You provide resources for them to find answers, but that's not the only way to do it. That's not the
Absolutely.
only out.
Absolutely. I think that, yeah, you can absolutely, and I always am an advocate for, getting mental health care, whether you pair that with spirituality or not. I do run LGBTQ groups and trans and non-binary groups, and it really is awesome being able to connect people to resources. I am the one that everyone comes to for resources, and I love being that person because I do have a research background. I love being able to find things that didn't exist before. And now we have so many other options open to us. So, one of the first resources that I used when I first came out, because I had no idea what was going on. And I've been in the LGBTQ community as a pansexual gray ace person for a very, very, very long time. So, I've always been in the LGBTQ community. And I've known about the Trevor Project for a very long time.
Yeah.
What I did not realize is that it is mainly for teens and young adults.
Yeah.
I am not a teen or young adult. So when I texted in, they were not rude. They still helped me and they still talked to me, but they did let me know that I was out of their age range. So just know that the Trevor Project is for teens and young adults. They were very helpful. It was really helpful to me to look up other forums. I joined some Facebook groups for trans and non-binary folks, and it was really helpful to be around my people who get it. So I encourage you to find your people, whether that's online or in person, or just listening to our podcast or whatever that looks like, because it really is an important piece of it. So there's, the mental health piece and tackling that and acceptance and all of those awesome things. And then there's the spirituality side of things that you can incorporate all of those tools. And whether, you incorporate oracle cards or tarot or runes or numerology or whatever the case is, you can really make it your own. And that's what I love about being able to use both as tools to better my life. And I've seen it better other people's lives as well.
Yeah, and getting readings is helpful, doing sessions with people to help you clear out. But this comes with that disclaimer that we're not doctors unless we are. And so general regular practitioners like, say, me, I am not a doctor, nor have I ever played one on TV. I don't cure anything but bacon. I can give you all my jokes, but it is a tool, as Sage has mentioned, and it is part of the process. We are not the end all and be all. That's why I feel bringing up how therapy, the mental health practitioners, and a spiritual practitioner can be complementary to each other, how we can work together to help clear out stuff, because there are some things, religion, that organized human-made construct can be pretty limiting. And
absolutely.
If somebody is beating you with their sacred text saying you're wrong, that's kind of like not getting the point of what spirituality is. So I make a very clear distinction between religion and spirituality. That being said, we do know that they can work together. What else? What other questions do I have? Chart research, gender acceptance. I love that name. I don't know. What else do we have? There is a resource I found when I was talking to my friend Crystal Rose. It was called the Gender Bred Person. That is a chart that talks about the whole spectrum of sexual identity, gender identity, all the nuances in that. But you said you were pan gray ace, and I understand pansexual and asexual gray. I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So when somebody says gray ace, it means that they're asexual, but it doesn't necessarily mean they always feel that way. And there's, some gray area. So I don't like boxes and labels, and I really try my best to, use as inclusive terms as possible. And that's something that I do want to bring up when, even addressing folks on the phone or if you're public speaking or not using gender markers. There is nothing that infuriates me more than being called ma'am on the phone all the time. I'm not sure where or why people think that that is an acceptable or polite thing to do, but it is not. It is extremely rude. Do not misgender people. You do not know somebody's gender based on their voice. So whenever you speak to someone on the phone, you do not know their gender, even if you think they do because they sound a certain way. I know that my voice would never ever get marked as anything other than feminine sounding. I personally don't feel like going on testosterone right now to, lower my voice. I don't feel like I need to do that right now. If that changes in the future, I don't know. But, some people choose to go on hormones to change different features like that. But, you never know somebody's gender. So really don't assume when you're addressing big groups of people or even small groups of people using inclusive language like folks, y'all, peeps, friends. There's so many gender neutral things to use that I really don't know why people are so stuck in the gender terms, but
Well,
It's
you mentioned the
infuriating.
box. The box can be warm and cozy and it's like swaddling a baby and you're like in there. But, the human experience has got such a spectrum. The box really doesn't need to be there. It's not
Yeah.
very
That's
useful.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that even non-binary is a box. I think that it's a bigger box. I like it for it being a bigger box, but it is still a box because underneath that, there's people that identify as agender. There's people who identify as gender fluid, which I also feel fits me. There's so many labels. So if you find that, one fits today and you feel like that doesn't fit you tomorrow, that's perfectly fine. That's why they're there. They're there to help, actualize what the feeling is. But if that word doesn't do that anymore, that's completely okay to change whatever box fits.
I think I want to point out that it's not just some sort of flight of fancy anybody goes through. Oh, I decide I'm going to be this today. Nope. And in the next minute, I'm this. I don't think it's that shallow. There is a lot of thought that goes into it, a lot of soul searching that goes
Absolutely.
into it. And to think somebody's just assuming just to give you shit because they're not going to fit in your box. And so they're going to change up who they are just to cause you trouble. That's narcissistic. And honestly, that's bullshit.
Absolutely. And actually, that was a question that I did not expect my dad to ask me. And it actually wasn't a question that he asked, but he said, I love and I respect you and I respect your choice. And I said, choice? This isn't a choice. Why would I choose to make my life more difficult? Why would I choose to have these things be a thing if it's, and when we started having that conversation, I think is when he really understood what being non-binary is. It's not a choice. And I think it's extremely offensive when people, discount it as a choice. I don't think there's anyone that would choose something to make their lives more difficult. Like, who would want to do that to themselves? It doesn't make any logical sense. It is absolutely not a choice.
That's really interesting. That's a point that I've heard reiterated by Crystal Rose, who is not on hormones, and so she calls herself the bearded lady. And she said the same thing. It's not a choice. This is who I am. Also, there's a language that's associated with choice. Like once I used the term lifestyle in relation to someone's sexual orientation, and I got called out on that. It's like, no, you make it sound like it's a choice that I've got enough
Yes.
money to live that way. No, this is who these people are. And because it was the mother of a gay man, and she said, no, that's not the word. And I'm like, okay, thanks for opening me up to that. So other words of choice. Well, I don't know. Do we want to go down there? No, we don't have to go down there. But I know it's becoming more aware of gender and sexuality and all of this has really brought into focus a lot of the outdated phrases I have used, and that now I'm aware of it. I don't go and pout about it because, again, I try not to indulge in too much BS. There was once I used just an old Texas phrase on somebody, and she looked at me like, really? I said, I'm sorry. And I corrected it. And it's not that, I don't know. When it is someone who is making just kind of a thoughtless mistake, not a malicious misgendering or comment like that, it's just making me question what I grew up with. And just as we give people permission, the royal we, knowing that a person can live their life to their authentic self. That's the big part of it, is the authenticity of it, to give ourselves permission to, yeah, make the mistakes, but also understand the consequences of that is to correct
Yeah.
and apologize and correct. And yeah, you, Josie, and Crystal have all three said that. To have that reiterated is reassuring for me, to know that nobody is out to cause trouble, that it's not this conscious effort on either part, at least for me and my favored people. It's growth, it's
Yeah.
progress. And I think that's
Absolutely.
to be celebrated.
Absolutely, it should. And I think that that's a really great point that people should absolutely take into consideration of how somebody was brought up. If they were, brought up in a religion that was very limiting, if they had very religious family members that have a certain way of thinking because of that, not as an excuse, but just as basis of foundation to know that we're all ingrained with so many different people's thoughts and others' thoughts when, when we're so young and growing up. And we don't realize that those things take on itself and then translate to other parts of our lives. And then how does that translate to some of the beliefs we have and the language we use? And you're absolutely right. Just because, somebody was brought up a certain way or used to think a certain way does not mean that they can't be an inclusive, awesome ally. And it really is just the awareness and the compassion to want to be better. Like you were saying, like if people want to do better, they do. And I think the part that is really disheartening is when people don't want to, that they only want to live in their comfort zone, what they were used to, what they want to believe, whether that's fact or not, they don't care. And that's really, I think, the point of contention is when people don't care enough to make that change because they see themselves as sufficient as is. Which isn't the case because we're all always growing and evolving, and our society is finally moving in a positive direction with inclusion. And it takes time for some people to catch up to that. And I get that. But there is no excuse for allowing old messages and old ways of thinking to still be in the present.
Oh, and then these folks who get so insulted when they are called out. It's like, oh, no, I'm an elder. No, you're kind of a jerk right now. And this is the expectation. They expect us to grow. And yes, I have somebody in particular in mind. It's like, you expect me to treat you with respect, but it would be unquestioned. And I don't go along with that. I don't think I ever have. And then to have that respect reciprocated, things would go so much better if everybody got that you want to be treated with respect, then treat other people with respect. And that's one of those basic rules in so many different belief systems.
Yeah.
You reap what you sow, treat others as you want to be treated. All rivers lead to the ocean, or, as you do, harm ye none, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to do, however you believe, it's all basically distilled down into respect.
Absolutely. And I think the basic thing that I know for myself is just the respect of pronouns. That's really what matters to me is being seen, and if there are fumbles or mistakes or whatever, they're corrected, moved on, and that's it. And I think that that's really all anyone wants, is to be seen and to be heard and to be allowed to be themselves, and to remember too that ways of thinking change so very much between generations, between societies, between periods of time, and to recognize that if you are surrounded by people who do not understand, just know that you aren't alone, and that sometimes we're not in the right environment or we're not around the right people, but you can seek out your people and you can do the research and look things up by yourself. And if you're questioning your gender, you can look up the sites that there's different pronoun and paragraph generators that you can test out different pronouns with your name to see how that fits for you. There's Facebook groups that allow the same thing where people say, I'd like to try out this pronoun. Can you use this pronoun for me, and see how that fits? So there are safe spaces with other folks who get it to try those things out and explore. And there's no harm in not knowing either. If, there's no shame or guilt in not knowing. And I think that is really important, because for me, I absolutely felt that way at first. I absolutely felt like, guilt and shame. And I was like, oh, and then what are people going to say? And then what about all of the other things? And, it'll take you down a rabbit hole really quickly. And that's when using your coping skills from therapy or your resources or your spirituality can come into play.
Yeah, coping skills from therapy. So yeah, that's good. Oh, you were talking about giving yourself permission, trying it out. That's an interesting, I have a theater background, so we rehearse.
Yeah.
And you bring in a bit and it's like, okay, let me try this bit. How does it work? So there we go. I knew I would talk myself around to it. So having somebody use the preferred pronouns or these offered up pronouns in a setting that helps you check.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because that is a great topic. Preferred pronouns. They are not preferred. They just are.
Thank you.
When people say that, and again, I know you don't mean harm, but when people can say like, oh, your preferred pronouns, that means that there is some other option or that there's some other choice and there is not.
Choice.
So they just are.
Okay. So when you ask someone to use those pronouns on you, but you were referencing it in that experimental period.
Mm-hmm.
So you're checking it not only at an emotional level, how one would respond at an emotional level, but also there could be that energetic component. Is this resonating with that energy? But that brings those two in. Okay, thank you for the correction. And so the pronouns, I mean, they just are. I understand more and more people are putting their pronouns in their stuff, and I haven't done that yet because I need to, because that's inclusive too, whether mine are different or not. So I will do that. What else do we want to cover? I'm looking at my notes.
But that was a great thing that you brought up with the preferred pronouns, because I forgot, because that is something that a lot of people will say, or they'll say like, oh, what are your preferred pronouns, or blah, blah, blah. But like for a cisgender person, you would never say what your preferred pronouns are. It's just my pronouns are blank. And when I was going through the, the trial phase of trying the pronouns and everything, it was so confusing to me because I couldn't understand why some days it felt so much that I was agender completely. And then other days I felt maybe more feminine energy, maybe more masculine energy, and I couldn't piece together what the hell was going on. And that's when I came across the term of gender fluid, and that completely encompasses all of that. And I was like, oh, I'm not broken. It's just a different term. So if you're feeling that way too, just know that you are also perfectly awesome and maybe just gender fluid.
Okay, I would like to ask for clarification on gender fluid for me, but then I'm cis, white face, white hair, white background kind of thing, and I'm trying to break that up. But with gender fluid, it feels to me that would be an energetic thing, but it's not restricted to just that woo-woo definition.
Oh, no. Like some people will use different names, different pronouns on different days. Some people will use their presentation as their way of expressing how they feel that day. And those people, I feel like, get the most shit for it because it's seen as being flaky, or you don't know yourself, or one of those ways of thinking that is wrong.
That seems to me to be so self-aware.
Right?
That would be,
isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my
is.
God. Okay.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. It is exactly self-aware. And clothes have no gender. Hair has no gender. Something that I realized, I was so tied to my long hair for so many years, and I had no idea why. And the day that I got my hair cut was probably one of the most freeing days that I've ever experienced. And it really shows you that there's no label that's one and true. Like, many years ago, probably close to 100 years ago, pink was seen as masculine and blue was feminine, and now it's flip-flop. But those things aren't true, and what it's just what society perceives at the time, at the moment of whatever it is. But a color is a color. A piece of clothing is a piece of clothing. Like nothing has an inherent gender.
Yeah, when I was pregnant and would not get any sort of amniocentesis or identify the gender of the child, my mother-in-law got really bent out of shape about it. I want to know what color clothes to buy them. I was like, yellow and green or orange are perfectly good colors.
Yeah,
and,
it's interesting. I grew up for the first 7 or 8 years of my life, I grew up in a beige room because I also was unknown when I was born. And I very much, now thinking back on it, like that was perfect. Like, like not one way or another. And then when we moved, my room was painted pink and I had pink carpet and it was pink and it was awful. I always hated pink. I always hated all of that. So yeah, that is exactly right. Like what color clothes? Like the baby doesn't know.
Baby doesn't care. And if somebody's going to lean into a stroller and make googie faces and misgender the kid, I can say, this is it. All of those bows on their head or, the football clothes. Oh.
Speaking of bows, when I was a baby, I didn't have a lot of hair. So bows would be taped to my head.
Yep. And then you take the bow off and then there goes more hair. It's like, thank you. I appreciate that. So I do see a note that I made, and what my hope is that gender expression, sexuality expression, that all of these expressions become normalized so that we don't have to go through and say, this is it. Now, pronouns, I understand that having those up in your name in these online things, that's understandable. But to have somebody explain, I talk about my transgender friend, is that a hope that's shared by others? By you here? It's like, can we get to a point where it's okay just to accept somebody for who they are and not have to get wound up about it?
I really hope so. I really do. I see that there's more trainings for mental health and healthcare professionals for the LGBTQ community. I see that there are more diversity and inclusion in different companies and different trainings. What I do hope is that we are not forced to educate the world, because it is a lot of emotional labor. And I love talking about it. I love being able to help others. So for me, I don't feel like this was a burden or anything like that. But I have been put in that situation in workplaces and things like that, of being the token non-binary person and like, here, you go educate your people on really how we do things. And no, please never do that to any LGBTQ person in your life or workplace. Hold a training. There's so many free trainings online. There's even ones on Coursera, which is completely free. You can take LGBTQ trainings by yourself. If you don't know something, research it for yourself. Do not make the person do the emotional label for you. I think one of the most validating things to me was when I first came out, one of my coworkers said, I researched things on non-binary people because I didn't know and I didn't want to offend you. And that meant so much to me that she realized that she didn't know enough, researched it, didn't make me do the emotional labor, and then told me that, hey, I have your back and I'm not going to do anything to offend you because I've done the work myself. And that's a huge difference.
The burden of responsibility is not on the person. I can see now how that would feel like. That could possibly feel like you have to defend yourself or advocate for yourself, and then to have somebody come along and say, no, I looked and I advocate for you. No judgment. I wanted to learn. And so I feel like that's what I'm trying to do here, is as much more information. So when somebody is telling me, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I want to do, I'll ask questions of them. But as far as that curious take that you said your dad took, he was curious and I just want to know. And I've learned since that to assume somebody has not thought it through. I know now that's not the case. They have thought it through. And if I'm asking for my own edification, that could possibly be there. But to challenge it, I can see there's a lot of difference in how you present a question, whether it's emotional or challenging or curious. There's a whole lot behind that intention there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that especially for, non-binary people or gender fluid people, there isn't one size fits all. Everyone uses different pronouns. Not everyone uses they, them pronouns. There are things called neo-pronouns. So things like Z here, here's, Z, them, Z and them, and some of the other neo-pronouns are different. And, there's no one size fits all. So somebody can use they, them pronouns and not identify as anything other than themselves. And that's perfectly acceptable too. So I think that that's also something that people get stuck in, of like, oh, if I think I'm this, then I have to have this pronoun and identify as this. And like, all of that is just whatever feels right to you. And if that means changing your pronouns, change them. If that means keeping them, keep them. For me, they, them fits me always, because it always encompasses all of me. And that's how I feel. And that's why I stick with they, them all the time. But not all gender fluid people feel that way.
Right. Okay, cool. And I do know people who go by one gendered set of pronouns, but they'll also go by the non-gendered pronouns. And I respect that. And in conversations I have with other people who mutual acquaintances, I think we keep saying it, and it all boils down to having respect for how somebody is and lives. And it's really not hard.
It's not, right? Isn't it?
Really not that hard. It may challenge somebody else's outdated, outmoded beliefs, because as we said before, just because it happened in the 50s doesn't make it right. Just because it happened before and you were brought up that way, it means that you can change. I think that's an indicator of somebody who is like emotionally intelligent and mature in ways beyond just being able to pay bills or drive a car. It's being emotionally intelligent. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that that's absolutely, because if somebody, is aware of their own beliefs and thoughts, they can separate that from how somebody is asking to be seen as. And I think it's when people get those things twisted and they see that as their belief, so it can only be what they believe. And that's very small-minded and not at all emotionally intelligent. So I think that, it goes back to being very undereducated.
Yeah,
And also back to, people have to want to. And unfortunately, we can't force that on them. We can't force someone to be inclusive. We can't force them to be accepting, but we can set boundaries with them when they're not.
that's great. That's excellent. I think I've actually, my disorganized notes have all been taken care of. Do you have any other thoughts? Something I might have missed?
I don't think that you missed anything. I think the only thing that I would bring up are some other resources that might be helpful for folks.
Yeah.
So for teen and young adults, the Trevor Project is fantastic. There's actually an organization called SAGE, but it stands for Services and Advocacy for Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Elders. So it's for older people who are in the community.
Awesome.
There are a lot of Facebook groups and social media groups for trans and non-binary people. If you're in crisis and you need to talk to someone immediately, you can text hello or start to 741-741. That is the number for crisis text line. They are a fantastic resource. I was also a crisis counselor, and really just to be, another set of ears or eyes, if you're typing on the screen, to be able to talk to someone and connect so fast with someone that is in a way anonymous. There's no preconceived notion or bias attached to it. So there's always that resource if somebody is in crisis in your area. You can also look up different warm lines, different LGBTQ agencies. Most major cities, if you live near a major city, has several. I'm Philadelphia. We have so many different LGBTQ centers here, which is fantastic. I know not everyone is that fortunate and live in, a bigger area. For those people, there are all of the online options for you. So even if you don't live in a community that's supportive, even if you don't have family that's supportive, there's always a community out here for you. And that just maybe connecting to us online.
Yeah, people can contact me and I can help them find resources. You can help them find resources.
Absolutely.
I think that's brilliant. I'll have a lot of these links in the description box. And if you come up with any more, Sage, shoot them to me and I will include them, because that's what we're here to do, is to create a safe environment for people to not only explore, but to express their authentic selves. That's very meaningful to me and I appreciate you supporting that. I'm just so happy to know you. I am so grateful we've had this lovely day. It's turning into quite a day.
It really has been so lovely. You're such a fantastic person. Thank you so much for doing this and for wanting to learn more and wanting to be inclusive and everything. It really means so much. So thank you so much.
And I appreciate and I'm so grateful for your openness and being there. And to get a hold of you, Sage, through Instagram.
Yep. On my Instagram, you can reach me at bracelets to bolster change. That is my philanthropy Instagram. It's not always consistent, so sorry about that with doing things every single month, but it is. I do sell bracelets to support different charities. You can always reach out to me on there, ask me any resources or anything at all. I'm happy to connect with you.
Great. And that'll be in the description box too, so that I can spell it out, because I want to make sure I get it right. And you all can reach me at Susie@bluelightninghealing.com. I've got the website, bluelightninghealing.com. You found the podcast, and I am grateful to everyone. I'm very grateful that life is more than just 0 and 1 and black and white and all of that. There is such a spectrum of experience, and I am truly blessed to be able to tap into that, not only with the things that I do, but now with more of the people that I know. Thank you all very much. And until next time, blessings.